It is a Kremlin outpost 100 miles behind Ukrainian lines, but now Putin's garrison is trapped. This shows a level of desperation that the Russians have in trying to get their armoured capability to survive. The statistics are not good reading for Vladimir Putin. He is failing. He has failed. I'm Philip Ingram, and this is Battle Plans Exposed. While the ground freezes the front lines, a new, much more dangerous game is being played. For the first time, Ukraine has imposed a blockade on a key Kremlin outpost in Eastern Europe. A move that fundamentally changes the operational reality for Russian forces. Pinned in Pokrovsk, defeat in Kupiansk, and a staggering 15-to-1 loss ratio has seen new nightmarish measures taken by Russia on the front line to gain an advantage. Away from the battlefield, Donald Trump is taking direct action on Russia's war machine, a machine financed by the oil trade. Developments in Venezuela and Iran are changing the economics significantly. Potential revolution in Iran, Maduro in handcuffs, it's not looking good for Putin. But before we explore these crucial indicators and warnings, let's look at the latest footage from the multiple fronts of this war. So in this clip, we have the Ukrainians taking out radar systems and Tor missile systems using their medium-range UAVs. This is what is called suppression of enemy air defence. It leaves Russian air defences vulnerable. But more importantly, the components to try and remanufacture these are extremely difficult to get. And these are extremely valuable systems, very high priority targets for the Ukrainians. And at the opposite end, we're getting new novel systems. This is the latest air defence system adopted by Ukraine, the Tempest system from the United States. In a high mobility truck, able to move across the battlefield quickly, able to plug gaps in Ukraine's air defence, and to take the initiative to the Shahad drones that are being flown across. Up to 21, we believe, have been shot down by this system already, but it is relatively new in theatre. It's showing the innovation that is a critical part of this war. And then, of course, we've got Russia's ability to continue to pay for the war. This is the Ukrainians carrying out an audacious attack in the Caspian Sea, thousands of kilometres away, against a Lukoil oil platform. And that is directly impacting Russia's ability to get the oil out of the ground across anywhere where it's got its capability. And the Ukrainians are very clever. They're attacking components in the oil platforms that are extremely difficult for the Russians to replace. This is having a massive impact on Russia's economy. So let's take a look at what's going on in Transnistria, an area that we don't hear much about until recently. Viewers of the show may have wondered what this area was in the west of Ukraine. It is a Russian foothold in the country of Moldova, a sliver of land that has been a silent front festering for over 30 years right on NATO's doorstep, and one Russia wanted to link up with in the early stages of the war by capturing the southern coast and linking into that, bringing this complete surrounding Russian-controlled area of Ukraine. They failed in that desire. But Transnistria is a ghost state, a country that doesn't officially exist. So we have Russian troops stationed in this grey zone. But at the start of this year, Ukraine has effectively closed its 450-kilometre border with Transnistria. And it has convinced Moldova to do the same. Reinforced checkpoints, tighter security and full inspections for any movement of people or goods means it is now effectively sealed off. In partnership with Moldova, a country looking to join the EU, the other informal trade routes supplying the breakaway state have been blocked as well. This strategic move cuts off Russia's military that are based in the region without firing a single shot. It's a small number, 1,500 soldiers that are cut off, but without access to supplies and logistics, their effect is diminished. Their threat is diminished. Transnistria's separatist leadership is now stripped of autonomy. For decades, Transnistria survived because Russia gave them free gas. They used that gas to generate electricity, which they then sold to Moldova. That was their entire economy. But as of January 2026, the transit of Russian gas through Ukraine has effectively ceased. Ukraine refuses to pipe Gazprom's gas anymore. Kyiv naturally views Transnistria as a threat to its rear. Now, why is Transnistria there? Why are there Russian troops there? It's all about the Cobasna ammunition depot in this region. This is the largest ammo dump in Eastern Europe. When the Cold War ended and the Soviets pulled out of East Germany and Czechoslovakia, they dumped all the spare shells that they had here. We're talking about 20,000 to 22,000 tons of explosives, artillery shells, mortars, rockets, aerial bombs, and much of it has expired. The nitrocellulose in the propellant has degraded over time. It becomes unstable. A lot of it is unstable. And the Academy of Sciences in Moldova estimated that any blast, should it go up, would be the equivalent of the atomic bomb dropped in Hiroshima, roughly about 10 kilotons. Ukraine had offered multiple times to help Moldova solve the problem. The reason why this thorn in Ukraine and Moldova's side hasn't been dealt with before is because Moldova said no. Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, was terrified that an attack would drag them into the war with Russia. The Ukrainian intelligence service, the GUR, knows that clearing out the Russian threat would free up Ukrainian troops to go to the Eastern Front. For Ukraine, by shattering the status quo without confronting Russia, it sends a message to Putin. Putin's garrison is trapped, and Russia's ability to influence the region has been snuffed out. So let's have a quick look at how this state of affairs came about. To properly understand Transnistria, we have to look back to the 1990s, when the Soviet Union was collapsing. Moldova, then a Soviet republic, wanted to break away and move closer to Romania. Their industrial heartland on the east bank of the Dniester River, which was heavily Russian-speaking, panicked. They feared they'd lose their status, and in 1992, a short but bloody war broke out. Moldova tried to take control, but they ran into a brick wall. The Soviet 14th Guards Army was the massive Russian military formation stationed in the region. They intervened on the side of the separatists and essentially carved out a buffer zone. It became a classic frozen conflict. Russia kept its troops there as so-called peacekeepers, ensuring Moldova could never fully control its own territory, and by extension could never join NATO or the EU without resolving this mess. It was the Kremlin's first experiment in using a breakaway region to paralyze a neighbour. They used the same playbook later in Georgia and Ukraine. So we keep hearing a Russian-controlled enclave. What's the truth? Not a single UN member recognises Transnistria, not even Russia officially, but de facto, absolutely. It runs on Russian gas, and Russian pensions, and Russian orders. It is a Kremlin outpost 100 miles behind Ukrainian lines, but now the tables have turned to Ukraine's advantage. Its military is primarily Transnistrian individuals who see themselves as Russians in a Russian army. There are very few ethnic Russians from Russia Main in the military that are still stationed there. Its days, it seems, are numbered. Of course, we've got Russia trying to suggest that they can still link up with the separatists in Transnistria. We're seeing frequent shelling of Odesa. That is what Russia was trying to do whenever they were trying to create this land bridge, not just from Crimea up to Russia through the east, but a land bridge through the west across the southern coast of Ukraine to Transnistria. Today, the shelling of Odesa is really about trying to stop Odesa being used as a port to allow Ukraine to export its grain and oil into the Black Sea and to the rest of the world. But it's sending a clear message that Transnistria is still a thorn in Ukraine's side, but not for much longer, we hope. Now, zooming out, let's have a look at the other critical front in this war. The oil war. According to Russian sources, the Delta Harmony, part of Russia's Shadow Fleet, was struck. Reuters added 3 Russia-bound tankers were hit by drones, all in the Black Sea. All were Greek-owned, en route to Novorossiysk for loading. In a dramatic chase across the globe, Trump has executed his blockade of Venezuela, hammering the Shadow Fleet. But the Shadow Fleet exporting oils from Venezuela is linked to what's coming out of Iran, is linked to the Russian Shadow Fleet and what is helping Putin finance his illegal war in Ukraine. The Black Sea This is Putin's artery for his shadow fleet, the ghost ships keeping his economy alive. In late 2025, the hunters struck. On November the 28th, the tankers Kairos and Variat were 30 miles off the Turkish coast, where they were hit by Ukrainian drones. These ships were part of the clandestine network moving oil to fund the war. The Kairos caught fire. The Variat was double tapped, and then on the 7th of January 2026, the tanker Elbus was hunted down. But notice the precision. They target the engine rooms. They disable the ship without spilling the oil. It's a message to the captains. It's a message to the ship's insurers. We won't poison the sea, but you will never deliver this cargo. The naval blockade has even gone underwater. In a historic first, Ukraine used undersea remote-controlled vessels to cripple the 340 million euro Kilo-class submarine inside Novorossiysk naval base. Arguably, they've used similar undersea remote-controlled vessels to attack some of the shadow fleet. The sea is closed. Insurance rates have tripled. But as the shadow fleet struggles to leave port, Ukraine noticed something else. The fuel meant for Russian tanks wasn't coming from the sea, it was coming from the land. But the land is subject to consistent medium-range and long-range attacks from Ukraine. It is attacking Russia's ability to get the oil out of the ground, Russia's ability to refine that oil into petroleum and diesel products and other products, its ability to store the oil. And whilst it's losing its ability to store the oil, the attacks on the shadow fleet that are emptying those storage sites to take the oil to different parts of the world, as they come under increasing attack, both physically and from sanctions. Many are piling up outside the ports in India, in China and elsewhere where they're trying to sell that oil, unable to unload the oil for fear of further sanctions from the United States and elsewhere. That means that Russia can't pump more out of the ground because it can't refine it, it can't store it. And the way Ukraine is attacking these different parts of Russia's oil and gas infrastructure is such that they're hitting those key components that are very difficult for Russia to replace because they themselves are subject to sanctions. This is not something that Russia can fix in days, weeks, or months. It will take them, even if they had a normal economy with good relations with the West, years to replace this. This means that Russian oil fields are having difficulty in getting oil out of the ground, and at some stage, some are going to have to close. And when they close, that tends to be permanently. So again, with all of this, Russia was relying on its shadow fleet. But President Trump, with his actions in Venezuela, with the pressure that he's putting on Iran, has now shown quite clearly that he will seize shadow fleet vessels. We had a vessel in mid-Atlantic that flagged to Russia. It didn't stop Donald Trump from seizing it. That is sending a very clear message to Vladimir Putin. But not only is it sending a clear message to Vladimir Putin from capturing the physical tankers, but also it's allowing Donald Trump to have greater control over the price of oil. And the price of Russian oil is below what the market value is. It's below the cost it takes Russia to get the oil from out of the ground. So Russia is not making any money from what it's managing to store, it's managing to export, and it's managing to try and use to finance its illegal war with Ukraine. It's actually losing money. That is not good for Russia's economy. That is not in a good place at the moment. So let's have a look at Russia's desperation. Russia's T-72 tanks. These are their mainstay on the battlefield. But even though they've got explosive reactive armour, they are being attacked by Ukrainian FPV drones. They don't survive. So Russia adapted their tanks and turned it into the turtle tank by building effectively a metal cage round the outside of it. But that then reduces the tank's manoeuvrability. It makes it unwieldy on the battlefield. Yes, it's a big heavy metal thing. Yes, it's got a gun, but it can't traverse and it's not good in the assault. It was still being attacked successfully by Ukrainian drones. Russia adapted some of the steel cages that they put around them to put sensors on top to try and identify the drone threats that were coming in, to try and make things look a little more sleek. But again, it still didn't work. So further innovation then brings out this, the Hedgehog tank with wire mesh out the outside, more detail in a moment, and sensors at the top to look for drones. But it's unwieldy. It's difficult. It's an adaptation that is out of necessity to try and stop the huge losses that Russia is suffering. But let's have a little look at it. Well, the theory behind it is to get a large number of metal spikes with further spikes that provide something that is a barrier to drones from flying in and attacking the main part of the tank itself. How are these spikes made up? Well, we have a metal rod with a number of branches coming out, and those branches then lead to sub-branches. It's like a tree. It's like the head of a dandelion with everything that's in there to make it impossible for an FPV drone to fly in and attack the main body of the tank itself. But it impacts the mobility of the tank. It impacts its visibility. It impacts its ability to communicate through radio waves. It impacts its ability to fight the way you'd expect a tank to fight. And whether it increases its survivability or not is a moot point. The Russians also look at other adaptations as well to be able to allow crew access without having to fight their way through this myriad of metal spikes and we have chains dangling. It's good old-fashioned technologies. We saw similar sorts of things during the First and Second World War. And then, of course, looking at it at a tank in the field as they start to prepare it, we have the T-72 as covered. There's not a uniform way of this happening. This shows a level of desperation that the Russians have in trying to get their armoured capability to survive the onslaught from the ever-developing Ukrainian drone threat. So there are certain statistics that Putin doesn't like. We're coming up to the 4th year of this war. In 4 years, Russia pushed the Germans back from the outskirts of Moscow to the outskirts of Berlin. In 4 years in Ukraine, they've advanced 45 kilometers. In the Second World War, in the Battle of Kursk, arguably one of the biggest tank battles, the Russians lost huge numbers of tanks, as did the Germans. But actually, in this conflict, the Russians have lost over 6,000 tanks. That's more than the Battle of Kursk. The statistics are not good reading for Vladimir Putin, who has one eye on history because he wants the old Soviet Union brought back together again with him as the Tsar at the center of it. He is failing. He has failed. That's all for today's Battle Plans Exposed. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and please share the episode on your networks and let us know what you think in the comments below. If you've got any questions, please put them in there. If you've got any suggestions, put them in there. But again, thank you for watching. Goodbye.